University of Kentucky Lambing School. This is your first session out of 5. We're going to do facilities, pregnant ewes, lambing pens, and equipment list. We're going to have some video and some PowerPoint slides for you. If you don't know, the Kentucky Sheep and Goat Development Office is an umbrella for the Kentucky Sheep Wool Producers and the Kentucky Goat Producers Association. I got our web address down there. Highly recommend you check that out. Got lots of good stuff there.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I typically have conducted a lambing school in January live at our UK sheep unit. I'm sure many of you have been to that. And we've had a lot of people participate in this. And I kept hoping and hoping and hoping that we could eventually do it again, but unable to do so. And I'm late, I think, in getting this done because of trying to wait the COVID out, I guess, to try to have it. But I thought this would be the next best thing we could do. Hopefully it will work for us in this deal. So, I have to have Kelly to help me to do this because of the technology, especially, plus her subject matter expertise will come into play, I'm sure, as we go through this 5-part lambing school. This is what I have planned. So, as you saw in the first slide, this one is facilities and a lambing barn, and I'm going to use our UK lambing barn as an example of how to try and set up an efficient lambing area. Then after next week, I plan on talking about rations, feedstuffs and rations that are fed to ewes in late gestation, at parturition and lactation. And then we'll do a birthing session following that, then working lambs, and then feeding lambs through the lactation period. That will be the 5th one. So these are scheduled to be basically about an hour or a little bit over each time. So there's only so much we can get done, I think, in that length of time, but we're going to do the best we can. So this is going to have to be all video, of course, and I'll be doing some of the videos. You'll see me messing around trying to get them done, but at the same time, I've asked Andre Fink to help us as the manager of the sheep unit. He's with them the ewes every day, and he'll be a major player in the videos as we go through this lambing school. His other guy that'll be there will be Matt Hamilton. He is the assistant manager of the UK sheep unit, and he'll be a key player in the videos as well. And I'd point out that some of the videos that you're going to see were made at different times other than today or last week or sometime during the winter. In some of the videos, you'll see us in short sleeve shirts. So as a result, that was last fall, because I taught a sheep science class at UK last fall virtually. And so we developed a bunch of videos for that class. And so it was nice and warm, and we were out at the working pens and all this. And so I'll show some of these throughout these sessions. So please understand that they weren't all made just recently. But the thing about it is, whether we did it last fall or last week, hopefully the concepts and the practices that we talk about will apply. And tonight I'm going to, with a little bit of an introduction here, I've got some slides that I want to present to you about a lambing management program to get us started. Some things to think about before lambing comes along, and I'm probably a poor one to talk about that, procrastinator that I am, but hopefully these will help us get ready for lambing, if we're lambing at a later time here. And then after that, I will discuss the gestation lambing area and the lactation area in our lambing barn. And I would point this out before I get to this slide, that I've been in a lot of lambing barns throughout the years, and I know that every one of them is different. But what I'm going to try to do tonight when we discuss this and look at ours, not that it has to be like the UK lambing barn. This is basically it's a research and extension and a instruction type of a facility compared with what you folks will have. So the things that I'm going to try to talk about will apply to your own situation. So you have to use a little creativity here. With that, then we'll look at this lambing management program. If you had come to the lambing school live at the sheep unit, I would show this in a chart to indicate to us what we need to do to get ready for lambing. We need to project our lambing dates. Of course, we all do that, do we not? Because we have seen the rattle marks on the rumps of the ewes at breeding season, so we know when they were bred. And so we made a list of the ewes, and we know when each ewe is going to lamb, on what date. We also need to plan our feeding program. Okay. What types of feed are we going to use? Are we going to feed shell corn, or are we going to feed oats? Are we going to feed soybean hulls? Are we going to feed hay? What kind? Alfalfa, clover, grass, high quality or low quality? When are we going to feed it? Gestation, which one of the hays we would be feeding gestation if we had more than one hay? Which one are we going to feed in lactation? On and on and on. We need to inventory these, of course. I'd say one of the worst things that we could run up against is to run out of feed. Evaluate pre-lambing shearing for those who have wool sheep. We shear all of our ewes in the fall while they're pregnant in anticipation of lambing in January, February. Some people have even sheared up to a week before they start lambing. With a good shearer, professional shearer, they can do that if they handle the ewes correctly. So there's advantages and disadvantages of doing that, and we'll try to maybe talk about some of those before this sessions are over. Plan your pre-lambing inoculations, your vaccinations that you're going to use, and then order your lambing supplies. You got to have those. Of course, I guess we have all done these months in advance. So then, once you've done those, then we're going to outline the barn arrangement. That's going to be our emphasis here tonight, is how we arrange that gestation, parturition, and lactation in the barn. After we've got that, then as we get closer and closer to lambing, then we're going to have to clean and arrange and bed the barn and get it ready to go. I just use our outfit as an example. Our ewes started lambing on January the 4th this year. We had 130 ewes, and we moved those into the barn right a day or two after Christmas, and they began lambing on January the 4th. We're down today, I think, I'm not sure. A week ago, we had 34 ewes left, and I expect we're down to 10 or 12. I have not talked to the guys at the sheep barn today. So move the ewes into the lambing area, position them there, and I'm going to show you in a minute the way you might want to do that. And then you need to also attend to details. I believe there's a few more details than planting the grafting stanchions and storing colostrum. Wouldn't you agree? That will come up as we get ready for lambing. We're in the UK sheep unit, and this is the first part of the lambing school that we're going to encounter.
Typically, I've been having the lambing school each January live at this same facility that we're in here today. But due to the pandemic, we're having to do the videos, so we'll do the best we can with what we've got. What we have is, what we're going to do is try to do the facilities. I'm going to talk about the pens today within the barn, and then in other sessions that I plan to have will be rations that the ewes will be fed. Also, then we'll do some lambing, birthing with video, also working lambs, and then we'll finish up with another one later on in about, I plan in about a month of feeding lambs. So it's going to be in about 5 different sessions that we're going to work with here. So the first one is the lambing facility, and I have a chart that I want to show you to begin how to set up a lambing facility. Granted, you don't have a barn like we have here, but you may have a tobacco barn, or you may have another barn of some sort or another. But we set this barn up similar, basically the same way as anyone else would. It's just that it's a different shaped barn, a different type of barn. So what we do is bring the ewes and the lambs that are fixing the lamb. We bring them in from outside. We brought these in. We brought these ewes in late December, and they started lambing on the 4th of January. And so that's a close-up pen that we call. So if we look or show our camera a little bit, we see these ewes, and they are in a close-up pen, and that's where they're going to lamb. They'll have the lambs here, and I'll show you a ewe that's just lamb in a minute when we walk down through here. So they lamb in the close-up pen, then we'll be moving to the lambing pens or jugs, so that they will bond, and then they'll come out of there down to a mixing pen, and from there you can have all the ewes and the lambs with the lambs that are basically the same age or as close to the same age as possible. And then if you wanted to, you can move the ewes, put ewes and lambs with singles in one pen and ewes with twins in another. So what we do is assume all of our ewes are going to have twins. So we feed them, we manage them as if they had twins. So what we do is bring them in from the pasture to the close-up pens. They lamb, move the ewes and the lambs to the jugs or lambing pens, down to the maternity pen, and then we could keep moving these. As these lambs would be older, they'd be moving up here. Then the youngest lambs would be coming here. We're going to walk down through the barn here and look at these ewes and the pens that the pregnant ewes are in. Then we'll look at the jugs, the lambing area, then the mixing pens. Then we'll come back and talk about the pens specifically. So we have 4 pens of pregnant ewes that we're looking at as we walk down the alleyway here. And then we have a set of ewes in this pen, and we have a polypay ewe that has just had triplets, as you can see in this pen. And this old Hampshire ewe that is in here, she's going to lamb pretty soon. She loves those lambs just like the mother does. So we'll have to get those lambs out and move them to the lambing pens pretty soon, because the lambs are liable to nurse on the Hampshire ewe and pull all the colostrum out of there, so that her lambs would be a little deficient. So we don't want that to happen. So we have to get them out after a while. We'll talk more about that as we come down here. C7441, this white Dorper ewe, she's really heavily pregnant. She is shorter legged than the polypay ewe, the 8543 that you see back over there. So that poses a little bit of a problem as far as management concerned, so they can get access to water and to feed. If they're shorter legged, if you got a lot of variation, I guess I should say, variation within a pen. But I'll talk about how we adjust to that as best we can in these pens. We're basically in the middle of our lambing season here in January and February. We have 130 ewes that are scheduled to lamb, and I'm not sure exactly how many we've got on the ground now. We'll see some of the ewes and the lambs as we go back and see the ewes and the lambs that are in the lambing pens and the mixing pens. Okay. This is a polypay ewe that had the triplets that we saw a little while ago. Andre's going to get those lambs out of the pen along with her. The Hamp ewe that wanted to claim those lambs a minute ago was very close to lambing. In fact, her water bag has just come out. Maybe you could see that. I'll show it to you in a minute. But he'll take these 3 to the lambing pen and process them. This is the Hamp ewe. She's all excited because she is wanting those lambs pretty bad, even though she has not lambed yet. But she will lamb pretty soon because, as you see, the water bag is there. So the way Andre got them out was pretty slick, don't you think? He's already run off from us, clear down there. He's going to weigh those lambs, iodine them, and put them in the lambing pen. We have a notepad that always keeps by the scale. He'll put the date, the ewe number, the breed of ewe. This is a polypay ewe. Then we will. He'll indicate the sex of the lambs, and he'll have the specific weights of those lambs. Then from there, we'll move her into a lambing jug or lambing pen. What sex you got, Andre?
Ram and 2 ewe lambs.
1 ram and 2 ewe lambs. Note how he weighs the lamb. How much?
10 pounds.
10 pounds, 3 ounces, or thereabouts. Is that the ewe lamb? The ewe lamb was 9.6. Pardon me?
6'11".
6 pounds 11 ounces, almost 7 pounds. You put a dot on there, specifically on that one.
Because that's the little ewe.
The littlest ewe lamb. So that would be she'll get a specific number in her ear, and an ear tag later on as they go back to the mixing pens. So he's going to take this ewe and these 3 lambs to a pen that we have set up over here. He's putting iodine on the navel, similar what we would do with any mammal that is born this way. to prevent navel ill. See how he carries the lambs with his hands like this? That's the way to carry them, and the ewe will follow right in, usually. Usually she'll do that. He's also talking to her. You can't hear him, but he's talking to her. He's going me like this. Would point out. Watch what she does. She went right straight to the nipple or to the water over there. You didn't get that, did you, Leanne? You got it. That's outstanding, because that's the first thing she wants is water. Because the lambs, she works on the lambs to dry them off, and they're quite salty to the taste, and so all the ewes will be really thirsty, and they'll need water pretty quick once they get in here. What?
Owen already nursed.
Yeah, already full. Yeah. There's a little lamb nursed.
He hasn't yet. He's working on it.
Yeah.
He probably nursed the hand.
Yeah. So what you're going to do is let them find the teat. That's best, isn't it?
That one, since he was probably nursing the ham, I'll check this ewe and make sure she's open.
There's a mucal plug in each one of the teats that sometimes the lambs might be a little bit, if they're a little weak when they're born, then they may have a little trouble pulling that plug out, so the shepherd might need to give some assistance there. But like this lamb that's already nursed, he thinks, then he was strong enough to pull that mucal plug out, whether it was from the Hampshire ewe or from this Polypay ewe. Can we hear him sucking?
I don't know if you can hear him. But
I can hear him sucking. Yeah, I imagined it anyway. Okay. Were her teats cleaned out or cleared out? So they had been in there. Yeah. So we'd like for them to work with the ewe, and that way they bond a little better than us trying to get the lamb to the ewe. So we'd like for them to work to try to find the teat on their own. Anything else you have to do to this ewe right now? You might notice also she's back to the water trough over there. She's really thirsty. That ewe is age on that ewe is probably. We'll look. He's got her birth date on the back of the ear tag over there.
17, so
she's the fall of 17. She's 3.5, basically 3.5 years. So she's had 2 lamb. This is her second lamb crop. Yep. Yeah. We think because she might have lambed. Her first time may have been at about 16 months.
She would have lambed in the spring of 19, 20, and 21. So this is her
third lamb. Spring, yeah. And then so he'll leave this ewe in here for a period of time. Will you feed her tonight?
I'll give her hay.
He'll give her some hay, and then.
You like that every tree, you wouldn't hurt to give her a little grain, but we normally just give the grain in the morning. So
Yep.
Tomorrow morning should have been ready.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're in the lambing pen area, and the ewes that have lambed, we saw them back up here in the gestation area. ewes that have lamb, we move them down here. But we would like to leave them in the pens where the lambs were born for an hour or two if we can, at least, sometimes longer than that, so that they really bond, and hopefully that the lambs will have consumed some colostrum by the time we move them down here. We process the lamb over here as we look over to the scales, and we've seen that before. So there, each lamb is processed, and it'll basically be given a number. And eventually, it will have an ear tag that Andre will put in there. So once they have a tag, a tag, I'll come back just a second. This is a little white Dorper lamb. As you can tell that he's full as can be. He's tagged, one in each ear. We'll learn more about that later. And then he's also had a vaccination for sore mouth. The navel's been iodined. His eyes have been checked to make sure that he doesn't have entropion. And then they'll stay in these pens 2 to 5 days, depending on the strength of the lamb and how busy we are at lambing. This lamb has already been docked. Usually we'll move them to the mixing pen at docking time unless they're a little bit weak or a little slow. And these lambs are a little small, so I'd say that he will move these back within the next day. These pens are size-wise. Size-wise, this ewe is in a 4 foot by 5 foot lambing pen. That's the standard size as far as for jugs. However, some of the bigger ewes that may have twins, like this Hampshire, the ewes are just larger, taller, longer, and way more. And she has twins, so she has 2 of those basically. So it's that would be a 4 by 10 pen that she's in versus the 4 by 5 that the smaller ewe is in over here. So most of our lambing pens are of this size anymore because of the size of the sheep. As we go through history, it seems to be getting bigger and bigger. This whole lambing facility, lambing pen facility here, we can put 32. We can lamb 32 ewes at a time because we can make 32 of these individual pens, the smaller ones. We can't make that many of the bigger pens, but with the smaller ones, we could lamb 32 ewes, and we could have those 32 ewes and their lambs in here at one time. This never, hardly ever happens to us. So we also, if we look up, we see some infrared heaters. We have these heaters in this barn, in this facility only, or in the lambing pen area only, because we would like to keep this a little warmer than it is out in the other parts of the barn, where we've seen where the gestating ewes are and the lactating ewes are. So these heaters are really, really good. You can be cold up here around your head, but if you feel down towards your feet, you'll find that it's much different as far as the temperature is much warmer. Find a significant difference. And that's where the lambs are, and they're the ones that need it. Usually we'll keep this even at 0 temperature. It'll stay above freezing. It'll be 40 to 45 degrees in here. It's fairly comfortable to work with these in here. And then they're in here 2 to 5 days, and then they go back to the mixing pen, and it could be 0 out there. So they have to tough it out. Also within these pens we have some feeders that we feed in here. We'll put hay in here. We can put grain in here. They're fed hay twice a day and grain once a day. You notice the waters that we have over here as well. They're, again, Nelson waters, the same kind of waters that we had in the other pens that I talked about. And the temperature is about 50 or 55 degrees, and that's the temperature that the ewes want. this is the spot where the shepherd is the most important. This is the area where the shepherd really earns their keep. Because typically the ewes can mate, become pregnant, and keep the lamb until they lamb, 147 days. Then, once the lamb is born, then that's when the shepherd comes to the forefront and helps the ewe as far as these lambs are concerned. And that is what's happening in this lambing pen area. So we've left the lambing pen or lambing jug area, and now we're in the mixing pen. These are used in the mixing pen area. Remember on our chart where that was. It came out of the lambing pens into the mixing pen area or pens, and in this barn we have 4 of these mixing pens that are already basically full of ewes and lambs. They've been through the lambing jugs for 2 to 5 days in there, then they came into this area, into this barn. And if you look, we got Polypay, we got a Hampshire, we have white Dorper in here. We have a little lamb that's over here that is kind of humped up. He's a little bit hungry. The ewe is a relatively young ewe, and the lamb is a little bit on the small side and not giving a lot of milk. So he might need to have a little bit of help as far as milk replacer as he goes along here. But we have, I'm not sure how many we got in here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. We got 14 ewes in each one of these pens that we'll have. On average, we're probably averaging about 1.7 lambs per ewe. So you can figure that out, 14 times 1.7. So I'm going to talk more about the size of these as we come back down to these a little bit later. Then we look over on the other side. Again, we have a mix of breeds in here. Doesn't matter. They're pretty much they're close enough as far as age is concerned that the ration that we're feeding will meet the requirements for all of them. Tails are docked, they're castrated, they have their ear tags, they've been vaccinated for sore mouth, as I'll talk about again. We're back up on the other end of the barn where we've got the gestating ewes in the 4 pens that we started with this video. So we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about the pens that we have here, and we're going to walk down through here and look in each one of these individual pens. Again, we've got 3, 6, 9, 12. We got 15 ewes in this one pen here. Okay, the breeds that we have in here are Polypay, and we have 2 Hampshires. The Polypay are the white-faced ewes. The Hampshires are bigger, and they're the black-faced ewes. We have 4 of those girls, don't we? 4. Okay, so this pen is designed to handle 20 ewes, 20 pregnant ewes, and their lambs, so that they have basically 25 square feet per ewe and her lambs. That's the way we built this barn, so that it looks like it would be a little crowded, and it would be, but typically that is a recommended square footage for each ewe and her lambs. It's basically 25 square feet for twin lambs. Now, when we get back down to the mixing pen, we'll find that though they're in the same pens, they'll be in the same size pens, but there may not be as many ewes in there, and so they would have a little more square footage. So this pen, all these pens that these ewes lamb in is on dirt. And we bed with straw maybe once, twice a week, maybe 3 times, depending on the weather. If it is really rainy, humid, and so forth, we may have to do it more often. If it is dry, then fewer times. We can also raise the doors on each one of these pens if we wanted to. Yesterday the sun was shining nice, and Andre raised the doors so that these ewes could go out in a run out, what we call a run out, on their own as they wanted to. But some couldn't because they were so heavy with lambs, and we have a ledge at the bottom of these doors that they would have to walk over. Some ewes are really, really heavy with lambs and don't have no interest in going outside. But they have the opportunity to do so if they want to. The other thing about this pen is, as far as the gate to enter and coming out, and then if we look clear to the other corner over there, that white-faced ewe that's chewing her cud, that's a mineral feeder that is available for these sheep in addition to the minerals that they get mixed in the ration that they're fed once a day. So these ewes have access 24/7, 365 days a year to a complete loose mineral. In addition, when we look back over here, as you follow the camera, the waterer, this is a Nelson waterer. It is heated. It keeps the temperature of the water at about 50 or 55 degrees. And for some ewes that are a little shorter legged or not quite as tall as others, we may have to help them out a little bit so that they can reach that. That would be a reason we'd have that concrete block under there so they can reach the water. Same deal, as we look at the feeder here, same deal, we have a ledge that they can put their feet on I'm coming around behind you. Okay. They can put their feet on and get to the feed that's in the trough that we put in here. We're feeding silage to these girls right now along with a grain mixture, and I'm going to talk more about that at another time. But they do have a ledge so that they can get their feet on it, and the shorter-bodied, shorter-legged sheep can reach the bottom of the feed bunk. We're going to walk down this way. We have this Hampshire ewe that was wanting to claim the poly-pay lambs a while ago. She still hasn't lambed yet. We'll give her 30 minutes to an hour or sometimes longer, depending on the situation and the history of the ewe. Then we might, before we try to give her any help. Probably the reason that she hasn't lambed yet is because of the interruption that she's had, because she claimed those poly-pay lambs a while ago. Plus, I'm up here talking and all this, that'll keep them. A watched pot never boils, we say, and that might be the case as far as these ewes are lambing. A watched ewe never lambs. That's not quite true, but it does have an effect of the disruption of their normal activities. It does cause a problem. I was talking a while ago about the short-legged sheep. These white Dorpers are, as you can see, are shorter-legged, built closer to the ground than the poly-pay and the Hampshire. And so as a result, that when they get their feet up on this ledge that's inside this feet, that's here, so they can eat out of the bottom of the trough, that poses a little bit of problem for those girls. But they can make it okay. And it's not only a problem for them, it's a problem for us, because that puts all the pressure on the back end of the ewe. When they're up there at an angle like this, I make it like this, I guess. Their back feet are here and their front feet are sitting on this ledge, and then they're trying to eat out of the trough. Then that puts all the internal organs, lambs, the digestive tracts and so forth, pushes to the back. And that can have a tendency to cause some vaginal prolapses, and we do have some of those that we encounter each year. We have another ewe over here that is a Hampshire ewe, 7282. She thinks she's going to have a lamb pretty soon too. The beauty of as far as the ewes are concerned, if you look at these other ewes, they're standing back away from her. Typically, when she really gets down to business as far as having the lamb, they'll probably stay away from her unless they're going to lamb immediately, basically at the same time, like that previous Hampshire ewe did. This one is a little further away from lambing than the first one that we looked at, but these ewes, see how they stay away from this ewe, give her plenty of time. I always say that ewes have great etiquette, because if the ewes having a lamb, the others are not going to mess with her. They're going to wait till she's done. Once she has a lamb, though, if they're really close to lambing, they'll jump on that lamb and think it's their own or want it to be their own. So that's the reason we had to get those other 3 lambs out of there before that ewe went any further. This is the 4th pen. These are the ewes that we have left to lamb. These 4 pens, and then once these, we have some more ewes lamb out of these 4 pens, because the mixing pens are all full in the back of the barn. We'll composite these ewes, and like a pen that's got maybe 8 or 10 in it, we'll move some of those ewes in there, extra ewes in to fill it up, then keep moving them so we can find another mixing pen to put the ewes and the lambs in. It would be similar to what we said when we looked at the chart a while ago, that we'd be moving ewes, making pens as we go. And anybody can do that in any type of a situation. Tobacco barn, producers do that. They make temporary pens and move them just like the chart showed and like what we do here. It could be a tobacco barn, it could be a hoop structure. Andre has a hoop structure that he works with and lambs ewes in, and it's the same principle. Move these ewes from the gestation pens to the lambing pens, then to the mixing pens, and keep moving. So this is the 2nd time in the mixing pen area. As we said, we got 4 pens full of lambs here. I don't know, I'd have to look at the numbers of ewes in each pen. One of them is not full. We'll be moving some other ewes in that far pen over there. But again, this floor is dirt. We clean the barn once, twice a year. For sure, after these ewes are finished lambing and the lambs get out of here. So we'll clean this out, and then we'll dry the floor with Class I sand until we move sheep back in here, and then start to rebed with straw. Again, I'd point out that the mineral feeder is over here behind this Hamp ewe. That's full of loose, complete mineral that we'll buy at a feed store specifically for sheep. Then this is a feed trough, and these ewes are getting, they've just started on the lactation ration. Right now they're getting about 1.25 pounds of a grain mix and about 7 to 8 pounds of silage, corn silage, alfalfa haylage, and alfalfa hay. The mixture on that silage mixture, haylage mixture, alfalfa hay mixture is 40% corn silage, 40% alfalfa haylage, and 20% alfalfa hay. We feed this with a tractor and a feed wagon once a day. We feed once a day. If you look in this trough today, it's about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon now, and they were fed this morning about 7, and they still haven't eaten it all. But by in the morning at 7 o'clock again, they'll have it slicked up, ready to go. They'll be up here. So we'll feed the grain first. They'll consume that. Then we'll come back with the roughage of 40% corn silage, 40% alfalfa haylage, and 20% alfalfa hay. Realizing that not everybody has silage, so you could substitute. If you didn't have silage, then you'd need to feed these ewes 5 to 6 to 7 pounds of high quality alfalfa hay, plus the same amount of concentrate, starting them at about a 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 pounds now, getting them up to probably 2 to 2 1/2 pounds per head per day as we go through lactation. Water over here, same deal that we've seen in all the other pens. Again, this is the same size pen that we've been looking at as far as the gestation pens are concerned. And we have 3, 6, 9, 12, we have 15 ewes in this pen, as I count. I may miss 1 or 2. But this pen, when we go across over here, I believe we only have, we have 3, 6, 9, we only have 10 ewes in this pen. And you can see how it is not crowded at all like the other pens. So we'll move some other ewes out of the lambing pens into this pen to make it approximately 15 head like other pens are. There's no heat in this barn in the gestating or lambing area, so the lambs have to stay warm through the milk that they consume or the warmth of the ewe's body herself. So we have seen the gestation area of the lambing facility, we've seen the lambing pen area, and we've seen the mixing pens. Okay? And that has to be, these are 3 parts of that facility, of the lambing facility, moved from the gestation to the lambing pen area to the maternity or mixing pen area.
At this time, then what I want to do is I have asked Andre to do a short video. It's a medium length video on equipment or utensils. I think we could call them utensils. They're relatively small, but equipment and utensils that we would need in late gestation, right before lambing, during lambing, and right after lambing. You've seen him use some of those utensils a minute ago. So this is another video that I have for you that describes the materials that we for sure would need for the lambing time. We could see that video, Kelly.
I'm doing a video of the equipment that we use during gestation, parturition, and then lactation. It's the basic equipment that we use during that time. I'm going to start with gestation. We vaccinate the ewes with a CD&T booster 2 to 3 weeks before they lamb. Then at the same time, we paint brand the ewes using a special paint. It's a scarborough paint that can be washed off the wool when we sell the wool to the wool processors. They can get this paint off and it would not ruin the wool. There are different sizes of paint brands. I got a small one here that I'm showing you. This one can be used on baby lambs. The one we use on the ewes is a little larger brand. It's about a 3-inch brand, and you can see it. The reason we paint brand the ewes is that makes it easier for us in the barn when we're lambing. We can, look at a ewe in the pen from the distance and not have to get up really close to her and bother her if she's trying to lamb. We can get a number and kind of figure out what's going on. Something that is not on the list that I have here that is used during gestation is a vaginal spoon. And the string that we use for this spoon is basically cotton twine that it was used to bale tobacco bales. We'll use this cotton string because it's soft and fairly easy to tie on the spoon. We don't use the strings that come with the spoon when you buy them because our ewes don't have a long wool on them when they're lambing, so it's pretty hard to do that. Vaginal prolapses are common during gestation if the ewes are eating a lot of hay or silage, for us in here, for example, and they have triplets. So if we catch them early enough, we see the vaginal prolapses, and what happens is the ewe cannot urinate if they have that vaginal prolapse and they keep pushing. By using one of these spoons, putting it in there and tying it, that helps support the vagina in, and she will urinate normally, and then she can carry the lambs up to the time when she's ready to lamb. And the spoons are designed that the lamb comes out underneath the spoon. So if you don't happen to be there when the ewe is lambing, she can still have the lambs most of the time, and the lambs will come out underneath the spoon, or she'll just simply push the spoon out. But we save a lot of lambs and ewes using these spoons if we catch them early enough. That's basically gestation. Then we move into parturition. The ewes lamb in a pen we have maybe 15 ewes or so in a pen. And then we bring them in here into this area. This is the lambing area, and we have lambing pens in here, or jugs, as they're normally called also, where we leave them in here for 2 or 3 days. And then they go back out into a pen where we mix them up with other ewes and lambs. When the ewes lamb in the pen, the bigger pen, we wait for them to finish. If they're having 1 or 2 lambs, once they're bonded with the lambs a little bit, we bring them into the jug, and we weigh the lambs and so forth. And we use a clipboard where we write all our records. And you can see we started with the ewe number, the breed, the date that she lambed, and the number of lambs. The day that she lambed, the weight of the lambs, and then you can see some ewes have twins and triplets and so forth. We write the sex, and then after that, this is all the main part that we do during lambing in here in this area. Then we go in the office, we assign the lambs a number, and we make an ear tag, and I will talk a little bit more about the ear tags. We also, once we're writing this stuff down, at the same time we're weighing the lambs. We use a scale and a bucket. We put the lambs in there upside down so they can't get out of the bucket head first, basically. We use iodine on the navel at this time, and we use a bottle with a kind of a big opening where we can simply put the belly of the lamb against the bottle and tilt it up, and we'll cover the navel cord pretty good that way with the iodine. So after that, the lamb is simply put back in the jug with her mom, and or if it's a boy, his mom, I guess. But they'll go in the pen for 2 or 3 days, and then they get turned out into the other pen if everything's going good. During lambing, we might use sleeves or gloves to put on our arm. You don't really have to have them, but it's usually wintertime, so you have a lot of clothes on, and that way you stay fairly clean. If you don't have sleeves during lambing, you can just use some mild soap. You don't need to have them to put your hand in there. Just make sure your hand is clean, and you can use mild soap and warm water at the same time to lube your hand if you have to go in there and pull the lamb. We use this gel that is antiseptic. It's kind of nice to have because that way you can lube your hand and the glove and go in easier that way. We have lambing pullers on hand if we need to have them. To use them, we don't use them very often, but it's one of those things that is nice to have. It's a lamb snare or lamb puller. You cannot buy them locally, so you usually have to order this stuff. And we tell people to have one in hand, whether or not you ever use it or not, it's good to have. I use it a lot just simply because a lot of times your hand cannot fit in there and pull on the head at the same time. So I might not even get the legs in there like you're supposed to. I just simply can go in there and maybe hook the back of the head with this cable, pull it a little bit tight and hold it in place, and then I can slide my hand down, and this will help me pull, and then I can pull the feet. You can use a loop, make this out of cotton rope just like this. This is rubber, but this works really good to lock the feet in place if you have to push them back in. That way you already have the feet hooked up and you can pull with both of these things at the same time without having to have your hand in there. So that's basically, if we have to pull a lamb or something, if I use having triplets or whatever, that's the equipment that we use for that. If we're here in the lambing area, and the lambs, of course, need to have colostrum right away after they're born and within a few hours, we make sure that they do get colostrum, and we might do that by simply milking the ewe. Helping the lamb nurse first. If we can get them to nurse, if they haven't nursed on their own, we basically get in there and help them, put them on the tit and get them going. If the ewe doesn't have milk, then we have to find some colostrum to give those lambs, and we might milk it from another ewe. Or in our case, we might have colostrum frozen. We put about 4 ounces in each one of these Ziploc bags. Whenever a ewe has extra colostrum that we have to milk her out, we save it and put it in the freezer. So we have about 2 ounces. This bag don't have a lot. It's about a tube full, which this is a 60 cc syringe we use to tube the lambs. So we try to have about at least 2 syringe fulls in each bag. That way when we thaw this, we can go ahead and give it to one lamb. There is also use, if ewes are lambing at the same time, you can milk another ewe and feed the lamb that way, the colostrum. But you need to do that within a few hours, and they need to have colostrum ready for the first 12 to 24 hours if possible. So hopefully the ewe will be producing enough colostrum. We use this is a feeding tube, and all the stuff on the table, to me, this is the most important thing to have. We save more lambs using this than anything else. This is simply a feeding tube. It's a catheter really, but it's the right size, it's the right stiffness to go down on the lamb. And you can see the length is about right, so once we push this tube in his mouth, it will go all the way to his stomach, and it will just be sticking out a little bit out of his mouth, and we can go ahead and put the colostrum or the milk in, depending on what we're giving that lamb. This is a 2 ounce syringe, 60 cc syringe, and we keep it together with the tube. Once the lamb has colostrum, if there's still a problem that he's not getting enough to eat, we might have to feed that lamb with a bottle or a nipple. We try not to use a bottle and nipple at first. We use the tube because we don't want the lamb to get attached to this if he's going to go back to nursing his mom. If we're having to feed lambs milk after a few days, then we have to have a lamb milk replacer, and we buy this as a 25 pound bag. And it takes basically a bag to raise one lamb if you're gonna raise a lamb artificially with artificial milk. So we keep this in hand because we are always having to feed lambs or supplement lambs here and there a little bit. So this is kind of how we do it. We try not to use the bottle if we don't have to. After the lamb is in the lambing pen about 2 or 3 days, then he'll be ready to get tagged and processed and then put back into another pen with more ewes and lambs. And I'll tell you a little bit about the jug a little bit before I get into the tags. This is an old lambing panel that is the most common that you will see in the barn. It's hitched here, and it's a 4.5 by 4.5 panel on this side, and it's 36 inches tall. We can make these panels hinge like this, and then we can use the wall of the barn as one side. We use another panel here, and this will close this pen by going on down the road, continuously down the side of the barn. We'll open the panel this way, and then use baling twine to tie the panel together to close it after the ewe and lamb is in there. You don't really need to have a feeder if you have clean bedding in there all the time, but our lambing pens have feeders like this where we can put hay. We don't feed a lot of grain in here, but you can on this feeder, so they're pretty handy for that. But you can just simply use it. The lambing pen probably just gonna have hay, so you can just throw it in the ground in the clean straw, and she will eat there fine without having to have a feeder. The bucket, on the other hand, we do like to hang the bucket a little bit high, because the lambs, if you put a small bucket in the floor like this in the ground, the lambs can get in there and fall head first and they will drown. So we like to either use a bucket holder like this, or just simply use string or a chain and hang the bucket up high to keep the lambs from falling into the water bucket. Water is the main thing that you need to have in the lambing pen, not so much feed and hay. Water right away is the main thing. After the lamb is 2 or 3 days old, like I said, we will process him using our records again that we have here. We had made a tag already for this lamb. Our tags, we use an Alflex medium tag on our lambs. We find that this is a good size tag to put on a lamb that is 2 or 3 days old, and he will not pull his ear down too far, and then it's a tag that we can leave on that lamb if it's going to be kept for a replacement if it's a ewe, she can keep this tag for the rest of her life. We don't have to change it or use a bigger tag. These come in different colors, and we write the number ourselves with a permanent marker. This is the number of the lamb, and then this is the year that that lamb was born. So right now we're working on the spring of 2021, and that's what the S and the 21 means. The back of the tag is a different color than the front, and the back is just we use different colors depending on the breed and the ram that sired that lamb. So this gives us a lot of choices on what to do. This other tag here is it's a tag, it's a special USDA, it's a USDA approved tag for the Scrapie program. It's got a chip on it that we can read with a scanner. So we lock this tag to this number, and if we lose either one of these tags, we'll have a record of who that lamb is. So by using 2 tags, we have a really secure way of knowing who the lamb is. So we use both of these when the lamb is 2 or 3 days old. One tagger goes with this tag, and then this other tagger is with this one. The other things that we do to the lamb is we do vaccinate for sore mouth or ovine ectoma, and this is a vaccine that not a lot of people has to use. If you don't have a problem with sore mouth on your farm, you probably shouldn't vaccinate, but we do have it on this barn. So we vaccinate our lambs early on when they're 2 or 3 days old, so they will go ahead and get this sore mouth on the area that we vaccinate them instead of getting it on their mouth where they normally would get this sores. It comes in 2 bottles that you have to mix together. You can do 100 lambs with this one bottle after you mix it, and you can keep it for the whole season. And like I said, you can do over 100 lambs or close to it. Comes with a little brush and a tool that kind of nicks the skin a little bit. So you basically first would scratch the skin inside the flank, and then you dip the little brush into the bottle of vaccine and paint it on, and then that lamb would develop that sore mouth in that area instead of developing it around his lips or his mouth. We also will dock the lamb's tail at this time. If you wanted to, you could also castrate the males. We do not castrate all the males here until they're a little bit older, or we sell them as intact males because we sell a lot of replacement lambs. So it's up to you whether you decide to castrate or not, but you can use the same tool for both. We definitely dock the tail of all our lambs, and basically this is an illustrator with a rubber band, and if that was the tail, you simply go in and put it wherever you want to, leaving a small amount of tail on that lamb, and pull the band off, and the band will basically make that tail fall off in a few days. If you wanted to, you could cut the tail off at that time with a knife or a emasculator, and then the lamb wouldn't really have a tail, just a little snob and a little piece of tail, and then the band. If you wanted to, like I said, at this time, you could also castrate the lamb with the same tool if it's a male. Some of this other stuff we don't use all the time. This is some of the medications during lactation that we use. You might end up having a ewe with mastitis, or if I use nursing triplets, she could develop sores around her udder where the lambs are constantly chewing on her trying to nurse. So we have, this is udder cream that we put on those ewes to kind of keep their udder soft and getting them from getting cracked and chipped and letting and stopping from letting the lambs nurse. So we keep lotion around for that. We use, if a ewe gets mastitis, some of the things that we might use is these are calf boluses, and they're the size that we can give to a ewe. These are Albon pills, and there's basically sulfamethoxine that we can use to try to treat mastitis on ewes. We have to give these boluses with a set of forceps like so we use Albon pills for that in mastitis. And then we will also give that ewe a shot of penicillin and some dexamethasone, which is an anti-inflammatory to kind of reduce the inflammation and the fever and so forth. Another medication that we use is Banamine. We use this a lot before they use lamb because you cannot use the dexamethasone before lambing. You can only use it after they lamb. So before they lamb, if we have ewes that are stiff or they get really sore from carrying triplets and they cannot get up and down, then we use Banamine for that at first. We keep a thermometer around because that's a really good indication of sickness. If we have an animal that is not eating or a lamb that is not nursing, the first thing we do is check his temperature and make sure that the temperature is normal. It should be somewhere between 101 and 102.5 or 103. On lambs, it's going to be a little bit higher. But if we get up to 104 and 5, we definitely need to use some kind of antibiotic to treat that animal. We use 10 or 12 cc syringe is the most common one we use because we can use that on lambs and ewes. And we use 2 needles, basically an inch-long needle for the ewes, and it's a 20 by 1. And on baby lambs, we use a 20 by half if we have to treat baby lambs because they don't need to have a long needle for that. And then lastly, the last thing, we do have sometimes some broken legs, so we keep some vet wrap around for the lambs if we have to wrap a leg. Broken legs that are below the knee or below the hock are really easy to fix by simply using a splint and some vet wrap. Just set the leg where it looks normal and set it back together and then splint it with some vet wrap. This splint we make ourselves. It's really easy to make. It's simply an old feeding tube syringe that we throw away because it gets really stiff and we cannot use it anymore for a feeding tube. We keep them around and we cut both ends off and rip it in half. And that makes a really nice lightweight splint to put on lambs. And then of course you can buy these. These are dog splints, but you can simply use these. And then the forceps for the pills. That's pretty much the equipment that we use on a regular basis at this time of the year. And hopefully that will help somebody.
Okay, I wanted you to see this equipment, and I have 2 or 3 other slides that I would like to show real quick that summarizes what Andre had to say in the video. So for gestation, these are the things he went over. Talked about giving the ewes a booster for enterotoxemia type C and D. That is type C and D overeating disease, and along with tetanus. Typically, we have vaccinated our ewes the first time. They got two vaccines, about two weeks apart originally. The first time they lambed, just like on the COVID-19 deal we've got. So you had to have a booster. Then after that first year of lambing, the next year, all they have to do is get 1 booster shot with CD&T. That protects the lamb until it's about 5 weeks of age, and then we have to vaccinate them later on at that time with CD&T also. We'll talk about that later. The branding paint and the irons for the lambs, you didn't see any lambs that had that were branded, but we can do that with some lambs, especially those that might be going outside. We don't necessarily do it in the barn, but if they're outside, running outside, then you need some way to be able to identify the lambs. And if they have a paint brand on there, it's a lot easier than trying to catch them and look at the ear tag. The vaginal spoon and the cotton string is very, very important, as he said. And we use that vaginal spoon lots of times at lambing time. In parturition was a pencil pad clipboard. You can put it on your phone, however you're going to do it. I don't care. You need to keep a complete set of records, please. Iodine needs to be on hand, and he showed you how to use that on the navel, which is pretty slick, I think. And talking about slick, I'm sorry you missed Andre getting those triplet lambs out of that pen. When I said that was pretty slick, wasn't it? So the way he uses iodine on the navel is pretty slick too. A scale and a bucket, I think we should weigh lambs. I think we should try to plan to do that if we're serious about this business. The sleeves, gloves, and lube for pulling lambs, then the lamb puller and the cotton string. He indicated he didn't use that very much, but once in a while he needed to. You need to have that thing around. Colostrum is very important. We're going to talk more about that in other sessions here. 2 to 4 ounces per Ziploc bag and with a plastic syringe. Make sure you got a feeding tube. Make sure you have a feeding tube before you ever start to think about having lambs. Make sure you have a feeding tube. Continuing with parturition is a bottle and nipple. Hopefully you don't have to feed lambs on a bottle. Yes, okay, to save a lamb, you may have to, but once it gets acquainted with that bottle, it'll remember that the rest of its life, and it'll follow you around as long as it's on your place. Lamb milk replacer, a bag per lamb, it's expensive. There's no question about that, but is it worth saving a lamb? We think it is at our place. We try to save all lambs we can. And yes, it may be a little bit expensive, but you're not going to lose a great deal of money if you save that lamb and you manage him after you wean him from the milk replacer, then he goes to market and you'll be in good shape. Lambing panels, I like what he had to say about that old time lambing panel. You can make them out of hog panels or cut those up and make them the size you want to, and they're about 36 inches tall. Baling twine, a bucket. Ever seen a lamb that's ever go to the barn of the morning and see that a lamb is upside down in a bucket of water, drowned? Pretty devastating type of situation. So let's try not to let that happen. So we need to plan for that. And a pair of scissors. He didn't mention scissors. He's got a pair that he carries with him continually, a little bitty set of scissors, so that if a lamb has an inverted eyelid, a baby lamb, the lower lid goes into the eyeball, causes the lamb's eye to water. He'll try to roll that out a time or two or three, but if he can't get it done, then he'll nip a little with his scissors, a little cut right below in the lower eye, in the lower lid, and then when it heals, it'll pull that lid out away from the eyeball so the eyelashes don't get into the eyeball. So a little pair of scissors is worth the money too. For the lambs, you need All-Flex tags and a permanent marker to put the numbers on, the USDA scrapie tag. So you need a different kind of tagger for each tag. He said if you don't have sore mouth, don't vaccinate. We do. We vaccinate every one of the baby lambs that come out. Rubber rings for docking, castrate, and lastrate or emasculator. This would be for the ewes. Udder cream, the calf bolus for the mastitis. Yeah, and then forceps, penicillin, dexamethasone, and banamine. He indicated that he just has those around in case he has to use them. Then miscellaneous, a thermometer, the 10 cc's wrenches. You need a supply of those, and you need a supply of needles before the first lamb hits the ground. Then the vet wrap, and the splints that he uses are really valuable. He has used that step-on lambs that are in the lambing jug, or they're outside in the mixing pens. Lambs can get run over and get stepped on accidentally. Their bones are pretty fragile when they're young like this, and that big old 250-pound ewe step on a 10-pound lamb's leg, that's a little rough. So he uses those splints, and he corrects a lot of breaks that way.
What is the recommended amount of feed for a gestating ewe versus a lactating ewe?
According to the National Research Council requirements, it increases with the lactating ewe. And it's also a different mixture. You need more concentrates in the ration for the gestating ewe and more roughages in the ration for the lactating ewe. Okay, so because simply stated, the ewe in late gestation, she needs a heavily concentrated diet and a minimum amount of hay. So we feed for the gestating ewe 3 pounds of hay on average, 3 pounds of hay and a pound to a pound and a half of a grain mix. For the lactating ewe, 5 to 6 pounds of highest quality hay and 2 to 2.5 pounds of concentrate. However, be careful, because our ewes may be a different size from what yours are. And I will talk more about that next week when we're feeding ewes in late gestation and lactation. But that gives you some idea to work with. Is that okay?
All right, after clearing the plug, about how long do you recommend to let the lamb search for the teat on its own before intervening?
It depends. If the lamb can't get up, all this sort of thing, and maybe the ewe's not claiming the lamb, you just have to use your own judgment as to how long before you go back and help the lamb nurse again. And if he still won't nurse, then it's time to milk the ewe out into the 60 cc syringe and use that stomach tube to get him going. There's no set time on that. Sorry, I can't give you a specific time.
All right, do you leave triplet lambs on the ewe or remove one?
If you like that ewe that had triplets that you saw, yes, one of those lambs will be grafted onto another ewe that has a lamb, maybe that Hampshire ewe. That Hampshire ewe, if she had a single, okay, we could graft one of those triplet lambs onto her. We'd put the ewe in jail, what we call in jail, that she's in a stanchion so that she has to take the lamb. We work with her until she does, and then she doesn't care what color it is. She gets so that she likes this lamb and thinks it's her own. And then if we don't have a ewe that we can graft the lamb onto, then we'll raise them on artificially on milk replacer. There's lots of ways to raise a lamb artificially. You can do it on a bottle, or you can do it. There's some other ways that you can use a styrofoam cooler and put some holes in that, and put nipples in it and feed it cold and so forth. So, but we try to graft everything we can.
All right, I got a Katahdin sheep producer, and they want to know, in the winter, should they provide supplemental heat in the barn for the lambing ewes?
What kind of barn is it? Is it enclosed? Is the barn enclosed? Is it open sided shed of some sort? If it's enclosed barn, if they're bedded, I don't think that should, and they're in top condition for lambing, I don't see any reason why you have to have any supplemental heat. These sheep, I tell you, they can stand the weather. They can stand the weather. Had somebody call me and talk, Miranda, I guess, ask about her ewe lambs outside in this kind of weather. They've got wool on them. They do. I know the Katahdins don't, but they're still there in the barn. But Miranda's lambs are outside and they're in wool. As long as they've got lots of feed and they've got a place to lay down that maybe is a little bit on the dry side, they'll be okay.
All right, can you provide a time schedule for moving the ewes from the lambing pens into the mixing pen into the bigger group pens?
Depends on when we find them. We might find lambs that have been born and they've been in there 3 or 4 hours. Or we might have seen the ewe have the lambs. We would like to see how she's claiming the lambs, whether they have nursed or not, and that she's taking those lambs. She's accepting those and they're bonded good. When they have done all of that, then we can move them to the jugs. Then we'll leave them in the jug for 2 to 5 days. That's the number that I use. Andre used some other days. He said 2 or 3 or 4 or something like this. You got to look at this, look at the lambs and the ewes and see if the lambs are good and strong and the ewes are taking the lambs and giving plenty of milk, then they could go back in 2 days. Or maybe 24 hours, they can go back. Some people will send them back in, but a lamb that might be a little bit weak, it might be 4 or 5 days before they go back. So I just use the range of 2 to 5 days before they go back to the mixing pen. And I would say this, on my original chart, I think I said maternity pens and mixing pens are the same thing. Those are used with baby lambs.
You mentioned that you clean the barn out 1 or 2 times a year and you had a dirt floor. Do you put Class I sand in that at all?
Class I sand in there after we clean the barn. That dries it. Then we move the sheep in, and after it's dried, and start to rebed again, a little bit at a time. And the bedding builds up over a period of time. Then we move the sheep out, clean the pen, dry it out, rebed, go from there.
What is your opinion on the Burdizzo castrator?
Is it a little about 6-inch one, or is it maybe a lot bigger than that? If it is a lot bigger one, I'd find somebody that's in the cattle business and sell it to them so they can use it on their calves. The Burdizzo can be used. Yes, it can be used. The problem with that is that you've got to find the spermatic cords, and you've got to make sure that you crush those spermatic cords so that no sperm cells can go from the testicles through the penis eventually, even after they reach sexual maturity. I think the elastrator is the best way to go, but you got to get both testicles, or you can use a knife. That will work as well. That way you know that you got both testicles. And if you do that at real young age, like what we're talking about, 2 to 5 days, then there's no problem. They'll heal, and they won't know what happened.
Okay, can you go over the setup where they were weighing the lambs with the scale and the bucket? Can you say like what kind of scale that is?
That's just a little hanging scale that we've got that it can be a little dial scale, or it could be one that like a little digital scale, and it's got a little hook on the bottom and a hook on the top, so that you can hang it from something, and then you can hang your bucket on the bottom of that. Or you can take your bathroom scales out there if you want to. You can stand on the bathroom scale, tear it with whatever your weight is, weigh the lamb, then subtract it, and you got the weight of the lamb right there.
How do you get the colostrum from the ewe if the lamb won't nurse?
Then you have to milk the ewe into the 60 cc syringe, or mix it into something else that it may be bigger, and then pour it into the 60 cc syringe. Then use the stomach tube down the throat of the lamb to administer the colostrum. Milking the ewe. Everybody knows how to milk the ewe, do they not? Surprisingly, I'm not, and I had to learn too, just like everybody else. Okay, sometimes you think you know how to get milk from a ewe. Yeah, you might have gotten it from a cow, but milking from a ewe might be a little bit different, because she's walking around in a circle. If you don't confine her tight enough, she might not want to stand. She might be wanting to take care of her lambs while you're trying to milk her, and the teat is in a position that it's hard to get to. You can become quite frustrated trying to get a source of colostrum from there. Would you agree, everybody, that has experienced that? I see some of you on here that I know have experienced that. So yes, you have to milk her. You have to milk her. If you don't know how, I'd try to learn it as soon as you could.
What do you use to prevent coccidia?
Cleanliness, clean as you possibly can. A lot of times, coccidiosis is contracted by dirty water with feces, urine, and mud, or whatever else is in here. So the best way to prevent that and is with as clean a facilities as you possibly can. And that means, like, we try to clean our waters, especially in the summertime. We try to clean those every day. At this time of the year, we might do it every day or two, but clean waters is the best way. Also, as far as your bedding is concerned, inside or even outside on pasture, needs to be a clean area. If you're feeding any concentrate in a trough or something like this, it needs to be as clean as it possibly can. Don't let mud, and don't let them walk in the sheep, walk in the trough, and this type of thing.
I had a question about when you vaccinate the ewes with CD&T, is it 30 days before lambing, and then vaccinate the lambs at 5, 8, and 11 weeks of age, correct?
Yes, except on the ewes. If it's a first vaccination, then it's about 30 days before. Then they need a booster 2 weeks before. Okay. Now, if they've had the 2 shots the previous year, and they're in late gestation for another lamb crop, then you give them a booster 2 to 4 weeks before they start the lamb. They just need 1 vaccination then.